What is an example of colonialism? Have you ever wondered how entire countries and cultures were shaped by the influence of other powerful nations? Let's dive into an example that illustrates this phenomenon perfectly. One of the most significant examples of colonialism is the Spanish and Portuguese conquest of Latin America. This began in the 15th century when European explorers, like Christopher Columbus, arrived in the Americas. The Spanish and Portuguese established colonies, imposing their languages, religions, and customs on the indigenous peoples. Imagine a vast region, home to diverse Native American cultures, suddenly being overrun by foreign powers. The Spanish conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, while the Portuguese settled in what is now Brazil. These colonizers brought with them European diseases, which decimated the local populations, and they also introduced African slaves to work on plantations and in mines. The impact was profound. Local languages and traditions were suppressed, and European languages like Spanish and Portuguese became dominant. The Catholic Church played a significant role in converting the indigenous people to Christianity. This period also saw the exploitation of natural resources, with gold and silver being extracted and sent back to Europe. This colonization lasted 4 centuries, shaping the modern-day cultures, languages, and economies of Latin America. It's a complex and often painful history, but understanding it helps us appreciate the rich cultural heritage and the ongoing challenges faced by these regions. What is an example of colonialism? Let's travel back in time to the age of exploration and discover how colonialism changed the world. One striking example is the British colonization of Australia. In 1788, the British established their first colony in Australia, which they named New South Wales. This followed the discovery of Australia by James Cook in 1770, although Indigenous Australians had lived there for tens of thousands of years. The British brought with them their laws, customs, and way of life, which significantly impacted the native Aboriginal people. The Indigenous Australians lost their lands as British settlers expanded their farms and settlements. This led to conflicts known as the Australian Frontier Wars, which resulted in the displacement and suffering of the indigenous population. Many were forced to work on farms or live in government reservations until the 1960s. Today, Australia is working towards reconciliation between the British descendants and the indigenous people. This example shows how colonialism can shape the history and identity of a nation, often with lasting and complex consequences. What is an example of colonialism? Imagine a small island in the Pacific, once an independent nation with its own monarch, but then transformed by foreign powers. This is the story of Hawaii. In the late 19th century, Hawaii was an independent kingdom ruled by its own monarch. However, in 1893, a coup led by local and international business leaders overthrew the monarchy. The United States then annexed Hawaii in 1898, making it one of its colonies. For many years, Hawaii was ruled directly by the U.S. until it became a state in 1959. However, the question remains whether Hawaii ever truly stopped being a colony. The indigenous people, known as Native Hawaiians, still do not have their traditional rights recognized. This example highlights how colonialism can lead to the loss of sovereignty and cultural identity, even in modern times. It's a story of power, influence, and the ongoing struggle for self-determination. What is an example of colonialism? Picture a vast continent, divided and controlled by European powers. This is what happened in Africa during the Scramble for Africa. In the late 19th century, European powers like Britain, France, Germany, and others held the Berlin Conference, where they divided Africa among themselves. This period, known as the New Imperialism, saw European nations establishing colonies across the continent. Local kingdoms and tribes were taken over, and European laws, languages, and customs were imposed. The exploitation of Africa's natural resources, such as gold, diamonds, and rubber, became a major focus. This colonization had a profound impact on African cultures, economies, and societies. Today, many African countries are still dealing with the legacy of colonialism, from linguistic and cultural influences to economic and political challenges. This example illustrates the far-reaching effects of colonialism on a continent and its people.